Hey guys, Joe here with another tutorial from SimVR Labs. And today we are going to be playing with particles. And what we're going to do is a bit of a fictional thing here. If I can find it. It's this one. The 172 float plane. And what I think I'm going to do just for fun is imagine that if not using the floats, we can fill this with some sort of liquid that we could spray, right? So imagine this is a jerry-rigged crop duster made out of a 172 where we rig some nozzles on the back of these two guys and we can turn them into sprayers, right? So if you want to add particles to an aircraft, this is what you can do. First of all, when we're talking about particles, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about emitters and particles. Now, an emitter is basically like a gun, and the particle is the bullet, okay? So the emitter is the thing that shoots out the particles, and the particle is the thing that shoots out of the emitter, right? So on this one, we're going to have two emitters. I'm going to have one back... see if I can have one back here, about there, and one on the opposite side. Basically, imagining there's some nozzles here. We flip a switch, and psh, out comes the liquid. So, first thing I want to do is I want to get the data refs for the location of those two spots. Now, there's a couple ways to do it. I learned everything I know about particles that I'm about to teach you right here from Javier Roland. He did an excellent tutorial on this. It got me started, but he did it he used 3D Studio Max, and you can use AC3D or whatever, but I can show you an easy way to get those points of reference really quickly. So what I want to do is I'm just going to jump into the aircraft, into the cockpit, maybe, yep, there we go. And I want to pull off datareftool, right? I'm going to pull up datareftool, and I'm going to search for the word head, H-E-A-D. And so pilot's head position, right here, pilot's head position X, there's a number, a Y, and a Z. Pilot's head X, Y, and Z. Those are the ones you're looking for. That is basically where the camera is. That's where your head is. And what you want to do is you want to get your head, get your nose, your virtual nose, right on that spot, all right, of where those emitters are going to be. So in order to do that, you have to slide out of the cockpit from the cockpit view. Otherwise, these numbers go a little bit wonky. They don't register correctly. So if I go into external view here, and then I slide around, you see these numbers don't even update, right? But if I go back into the cockpit and I slide around, you see my X is now updating left and right. I have to stay in the cockpit. Now, the one thing with the 172 and a lot of planes is it doesn't let you go out of the cockpit. It stops you right here. Well, that's a way they did the solid modeling, but you can get around that by just opening the door, right? So I'm going to open the door and I'm just going to slide right out, right? Having never gone into external view, I'm just using my arrow keys and my comma and period, and I'm trying to get down to the spot here that I like, okay? Pretty good modeling right there. The texturing with the normal maps, it's a really good job by Laminar there. I'm gonna get right in the middle of this circle here, right? Pretty much until it disappears right there. I like that. So then I'm looking for X, Y, and Z, right? So then what I want to do is I want to just get into any kind of notepad, right? I use Notepad++, and I'm just gonna say X, Y, and Z. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste those numbers here. So pilot's head X, negative 1.2, basically. And then the Y was negative 1.35. And the Z is basically 3. Right. X, Y, and Z. Boom. There's my numbers. Now, I can go ahead and minimize that, and I can close my datareftool, because that's really all I need. and I'm going to minimize this, right? So now if you look in the description of this video, you'll notice a link to download this zip file. This is a zip file that I'm calling particle template, right? I created this just to make it super easy. So first thing you want to do is unzip it. So I'm just gonna extract to particle template folder and mix this folder. Then I'm gonna take this folder and I'm gonna open it and see what we got. Inside this folder, you should have another folder called particles. Inside that, you've got a couple things, okay? You're gonna take this particles folder, right? And just copy it. And then you're gonna put it in the objects folder of your aircraft, right? So X-Plane 11, aircraft, Laminar Research, 172, objects, right? In here you'll find a bunch of objects and stuff, OBJ files and PNGs and maybe some folders. You're gonna paste that folder in there, particles, boom, there it is. And then inside that, you want to rename this to whatever you want, right? You could leave it particle template, but I would rename it specific to each aircraft that you do, because all of these are just going to apply to that particular aircraft, right? So let's call this like Joe's dash test, right? So everything's Joe's test. I'll just copy that. Paste. And paste. Now what this says AutoCAD plots. That's because I have AutoCAD on this computer, but it's a PSS file. There's a PSS file, which is a particle system file. And then there's a PNG, and the PNG looks like this, right? These are textures for every kind of texture that you can have. Now, I haven't quite figured out exactly how this works, but you'll notice there's some columns and rows, and you can call out different columns and rows to pick different textures in different particles. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I'll show you what it looks like in the particle browser here in a little bit. But that's that, so you won't really need to mess with that. But the whole thing is you'll have an OBJ file, an object file, just like any other object file, and then the PNG and the PSS. So what we want to do is, the next step here is to open up this OBJ. This is a template, right? And you'll notice that the texture that it's referencing is still called particle template.png, but we renamed it, right? We renamed it to Joe's dash test. So let's make sure we rename that, and then the PSS file, Joe's dash test, right? And then point counts, you leave that alone. Emitter, okay? The emitter name, which we're going to change once we pick an emitter name. I'll show you how to do that later. And then X, Y, and Z is where you want to put your X, Y, and Z numbers that we just got here. So this was X. So I'm going to copy, paste, Y, copy, paste, Z, copy, paste, boom, and then save it. Now if I want a second emitter, which I do, I'm just gonna copy this whole line and add another one, just like that. Now what I want in this second emitter is I want it where am I at here? Oh, let's do this. So that one was this one, right? And the X, the only thing that's going to change is the X. The Y, the up and down, and the Z, the forward and back, is going to be the same. So if the X was negative 1.19 or whatever it was off of center, right? If this is center and that's 0, negative 1.19 is over here. Positive 1.19 on the X should put it exactly where I want it on this side too, right? So that's just a little bit of logic there. So all I can do is take away this negative sign here on this X, and that should put it on the other side, right? Hopefully. And so now what we want to do is we have to get this OBJ connected to the aircraft. Now, how do I connect this OBJ to the aircraft? So if I went in here and I just started going into the particle browser and started, changing all the things in the OBJ, the emitter name and everything, and trying to get it, it wouldn't actually work. You wouldn't actually see anything. It's because I haven't connected the OBJ to the aircraft. Just because you put it in the objects folder doesn't connect it to the aircraft. The way you connect it to the aircraft is you have to get into plane maker, right? So I'm going to go into X-Plane 11 and then plane maker, right? Open that up. And there's my 172 float plane. If you don't have it pulled up and you have another one pulled up, you just go to File, Open, and you find it, right? Seaplane, ACF, and you just click Open Aircraft. Right, it's going to open that. Now you go to Standard up here, and you go to Miscellaneous Objects. Okay, go all the way to the bottom, and you want to add one. Right, you want to add that particle OBJ. See, all these are all different OBJ files. You got to add yours to connect it. So click Add, and then you want to scroll down a little bit, and then there it is. But it's not selected, so you want to click on this little box here to select your particles thing. This gives you a list of all the objects in the 172. These are all the current ones that are there. And if you look, you'll see one that's particles, Joe's test OBJ. It found that in the file structure, right? So I just want to click on that once, click Open Object, and it's going to add it to it. You don't need to change anything down here. Lighting outside, that's fine. Shadow mode, none, that's all good, all right? So then I just want to click this X right here, and then I got to save it. If I don't save it, it's not actually going to work. So I'm going to save, and then I'm going to quit. I don't need to be in there anymore. Now I've connected it. That's all it took, right? So now I can jump back in here, and if I go to Developer, Reload Aircraft and Art, it's going to reload one with a connected OBJ file. Does that make sense? All right. So let's get rid of those, and we will get into the particle browser, right? So show particle system browser under developer. Developer, show particle system browser is what we want to do. Now, if you look here, you'll see these two, which are the defaults. These defaults are located in X-Plane 11 resources effects aircraft system.pss. There's also one for aircraft explosion, right? So it's a totally different PSS file for aircraft explosion. Aircraft system, though, has all your aircraft system particles, right? Which is what we're basically copying, okay? Basically, in my template, I have the entire aircraft system particle file, and I've renamed it to particle template.pss. And then you're going to rename it to whatever you want, right? So you'll see that it registers it right here. If it doesn't, you can just hit refresh, and it should be there. And so if you double click on it, right, it brings up this other part, right? And I can go ahead and I can close the particle browser because this right here is what I want. Now remember I said I have emitters and particles, right? Those are the two things that I care about, right? If I click on texture, right, aircraft system PNG. I think this needs to be Joe's test. Pretty sure this needs to be Joe's test. Joe's-test.png. Yep, that should be it. Yep, there it is. Boom. Okay, and then I can. That's fine. All right. So there's my textures, and then if I go into particles, I don't care about particles yet, right? Because those are the bullets that fire out of the gun, right? Or the water that comes out of the hose, or however you want to say it. But we got to put the guns on first, right? So emitters. If you look at emitters, you get this long list of emitters that are system emitters, right? Now, you can choose to take over any one of these, or you can copy one and then modify it. So what I like to do is I like to copy one and modify it based on what I think is going to be closest to what I'm trying to do, right? So we're trying to spray some sort of fluid, some sort of chemical fluid out of our, things. So we can look, we got like jet fire, we've got like exhaust, we've got all these different ones, but one of them is dumping water, right? And if I hit preview on dumping water, you'll see that it shows something crazy, right? It shows this psycho thing, right? It's way too big or whatever. If I go to dumping fuel and I hit preview, you know, it's not doing much. If I click on and the reason dumping fuel is not doing anything is because I don't even think it's connected. I don't even think that's something you can do. Maybe you can, but if I click on like I don't know, let's just look at some of these. If you go to jet fire, that one's not working. Turbo fire, turbo smoke. Oh, so a lot of these aren't working because the data ref isn't on. Okay, so let's just do this one thing at a time here. So let's go to dumping water, right? It looked crazy, but we're gonna roll with it, right? So let's go ahead and copy it. So I'm gonna click on copy down here, right? Copy, and it's called dumping water copy, and I'll take it and I'm gonna rename this to, you know, from the rear. We'll call it left sprayer. Left spray. That's fine. My Y doesn't work, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. We'll call that left spray, and or left. I can't abide that. Let's call it left Kim, right? And then I'll copy it again, and I'll call this one right Kim. Cool. So left Kim. Let's look at what this is actually. Okay, so I've got my rate at 25 and 50, and if I click on it, it's tied to the data ref dump water, right? 25 and 50. If I click preview, of course now it's not going to do it. See, this one does it. No, neither one of them are doing it. Oh yeah, they're stopping preview again. If I hit preview, and then I should be able to change things live here. And so if I change the size on this to 0.1, this is when the data ref is at 0. It's at 0.1, right? Because right now our data ref's at 0. Right? If your data ref's at 0, your size is at 0.1, but if your data ref was at 1, then it would be at 1, right? And the size is obviously way too big, right? So what we want to do is we want to start playing with what we want it to look like when it starts spraying. So first of all, you'll notice that left Kim is not anywhere close to where it should be. It's coming out of the top. Well, why is that? Well, it's because I haven't connected left Kim in our OBJ file, or right Kim. Remember, these are the emitter names. So we have to connect those emitter names in our OBJ file, right? So if you click on this where it says emitter name, you want to change this part to left Kim. And it's like a, I think you have to have the spelling and everything correct, and also the capitalization. So right Kim, I actually capitalized the C. Left Kim, I didn't, because I'm dumb. So let's do that. There we go. And I want to save this, right? And when you click save, it doesn't actually do anything. Maybe. Because when I click save here, and then I close it, it's going to ask me, do I want to save it again? So I'll click save again, right? So then I'll come back in here, and I think I capitalized this one too, and I'll save it. And I saved the other one, and now I'm going to do a developer reload. So now I'm reloading this new edited OBJ with these two names, which should attach it to the thing, and now they should be coming out of the correct part, right? So show particle system browser, double click on that, go back in there, check out my emitters, pull these over, left cam, let's preview it. It's still coming out the top. Oh, what's my offsets? Those are correct. Why is that still coming out the top? I wonder if I have to underscore. Maybe it doesn't like the space. Left cam, right cam. That. Save that. Reload. Hey, there we go. Now I think they might be coming out of the right spot. But it obviously looks like crap. So let's fix that. Now that looks like right. Whoa. Yeah, that's definitely the right side. And the right side is set to always on, apparently. So, here we go. Let's talk about what's going on. Right now, the rate is set for cockpit switches dump water. So when it's at 0, it's going to be shooting out at 25 and 50. When it's at 1, it's also going to be shooting out at 25 and 50, which means no matter what this data ref says, either 1 or 0, it's going to be shooting something out. Now, the alpha is actually the visibility of it, right? So right now, the data ref dumping water is at 0, but the alpha says that at 0, it should be 1, which means it should be visible. So if I turn the alpha off, it turns off the dumping. You can't see it. Does that make sense? So we only want that to be seen when it is at 1, not at 0. So at 0 would be on all the time. But if I'm doing some testing, like I'm doing now, where I want to kind of tweak it to make it look right, I will put it back at 1 just so we can watch it do its thing and we can make live changes to it, right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to see, okay, my particle type is dumping water, right? But the particles are red, right? These are the bullets that are coming out, and they're coming out way too much, way too crazy, way too big, and way too red. So the first thing I want to do is I want to knock that size down quite a bit. So I'm going to knock it down to like 0.2, right? For now, on all things, right? 0.2. Right, that still doesn't look very great, but it's something to work with. And then what I want to do is go up to the particles. So right now I'm still working on emitters, right? If I go up to particles, I get a list of particles. What's my particle type? Dumping water. So I'm looking for dumping water, right? Dumping water, there it is. And on the particles, here's where you can change things like gravity, drag, angular velocity, turbulence, elasticity, the mode. So right now it's on normal mode, so it hits the ground and just kind of like sprays off. But if I put it on like collision mode, ground collision, it's on bounce. If I put it on ground collision die, it's going to hit the ground and kind of die. And that's kind of what I want. I don't necessarily want it to bounce, right? So I'm fine with that, ground collision die. This right here was where I was saying it kind of references different parts of the texture. So I'm at 8 and 8 on X and Y. I think if I go 4, 4, it's going to give me like different. So now it looks like fire, right? So I'm just not sure which ones to do here. 16 and 16. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, starting cell, what's that supposed to be? Yeah, I don't know. Put that at 1, put this at 8 and 8. I mean, we could probably work with that. Let me see here. Let me look because I wrote some of this down when I was playing with it earlier. So if I go to 8, 8, and 18. 8, 8, and 18. And then this was like 4 and 1. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. I think. Remember, I'm just looking at the right one. And then what I'll do is try to match these back where I was at. So my drag was actually at like 0.5. Like 0.75 when it's on. So then angular velocity. This is where angular velocity is like, well, watch. If I go from 0.1 to like 1, it's kind of hard to tell there. Let me get up in the air. So I have X slew is the plugin, what it's called. It gives you the ability to slew up and down and around, kind of like at FSX back in the day, right? So I can take that, and that's 1. And that's 0.1. You can't really see a difference there. Let's make that 1. Oh, because I have X slew on. Anyway, let's make this 4.4. And then make this 0.2. Why? Because I've played with this and I know how it works. Or I know what it looks good when I have all these set the way they're supposed to be set, right? So elasticity, we could set this to 1. And you could spend hours tweaking on these and being like, oh, that looks great, you know. Blend additive, if we look at it, it like changes the lighting mode like that. Pre-multiplied looks like crazy, and then, you know, normal. I think I'm gonna leave it on normal right now. And then see, animation rate is kind of like the speed with which it comes out. And I guess I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now. Scale, you can see it kind of allows you to dial that in. All right, now I'm setting the scale for when the data ref is at 0.5. What I really want to do is set the scale for when the data ref's at 1, right? So right now I'm looking at what the scale is when the data ref's at 0. So I can bring that up a bit. It's starting to look pretty good. Starting to look pretty good there. Emissive, or, you know, diffuse is like color. So if I go to 0.5 on the diffuse, oh, what did I just do? Oh, I flipped it around. Stand by. This X slew takes over some of your keyboard controls and doesn't give you the ability to reassign them. So some of these, when I hit numbers on the numpad, it like will do things. So I got to use the top row of numbers. But diffuse is kind of like how you change the tint, right? And then tint here is actually how you change the color. So 111 is white, and this is red, green, blue. And right now it's feeding 0 on the data ref. So if I said red, green, so if I said I want this whole thing to be green, I would change this one to 0, and I would change this one to 0. Right? So if I was going to do something like an air show where I have like a streaming contrail behind me, and I had 3 of these, I could do like red, white, and blue, you know, if I'm from the US or France or something, and you can have all kinds of fun with colors and stuff and just get goofy with it. But for what we're doing, white is good, so we'll leave it white. And you know, gravity, you can make, if you take this and you know, you can play with that, you can get it to like, that's more of a spray to me kind of thing. Like I can even almost do that. Right, now remember, you're gonna be, you probably want this at 1 because you're gonna be flying, and when you're flying, the forces will actually knock it back and make it look a little bit better. I still don't like how it's like spread out like that. So let's leave this like it is. I'm gonna take the turbulence out of it. So turbulence just gives a little bit of a randomization, and I'm gonna get rid of as much randomization as I can. And yeah, that's good on the particle. Let's leave that particle. Let's go back to the emitter and tweak just a little bit more on that, right? On the right chem. And initial heading, let's give these both the same 180. I think that might be a lot of our issues. It looks like it's got, looks like it's spraying out of like 2 different nozzles, and I don't love that. There we go. Now it's a little more straight coming out of there. And so size, I can take and just pull that up and watch it do its thing. I can pull it down. I don't know, size, yeah, I mean, that's kind of good. It's kind of good right there. Maybe 0.2, I'll go 0.2 across the board. The alpha, so the alpha, I might actually bring that down a little so you can see through it a little bit more. Give it just a little bit of like clarity, like so you can see through it, so it's not so opaque. There we go. There, now you can still see through it. Maybe that's a little too much, or a little too little actually. Bring it up some, maybe to 0. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's better. Yep, I like that. Right, and then lifetime. So lifetime is what point it's gonna die. So if I come up, let's come up a little more on the elevation here. Let me just slew up some. All right, let me zoom out. It's set for 4 seconds. Now that's not very realistic to me. At that point, it should have diffused. So if you take lifetime and you pull lifetime down, right, it kind of like dies and just kind of floats down. So I really need to turn the other one off so you can see. Let me go to the left chem, and I'll make sure the alpha on the 0 is 0, and then I'll turn that off for now. There we go. So that's pretty good right there. That's pretty much what we're looking for. And it may, you know, to me, it's a little bit too, it's a little bit to the right, or to the left too much, or like the heading of it. So initial heading, yeah, here we go. This is the problem. 180. 180 there. 180 there. 180. 180. There, that's better. And so that's our emitter heading. And the particles, I don't think the particles dumping water. I don't think the particles have a heading, really. No. Yeah, that's fine. So the particles don't really have a heading. So I'm going to say that's pretty good. It may be hitting some wind, and that's what's going on and why it's kind of like tilted. What am I on? Am I on the left? I'm still on the right. Why did that not go to 180? There we go. That's better. Now we're looking good. Okay, so now I've got that right, and I like it. I like where that's at, right there. And so I'm gonna take right chem, and I'm gonna copy it one more time. Actually, I'm gonna delete left chem first. So I think if I just hit minus on the left chem, and I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna rename this to left underscore chem. Okay, now I've got right chem and left chem, and they're both in the same spot and doing the same thing, except they're not the same spot. They're right there. So that's exactly what I want right there. So there we go. And then if I raise up a little bit, you can see that it dies off right there, which is great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, close it, save it, and then I'm going to hit Y to unslew, and you can see it kind of does its thing all the way to a fiery death. There you go. I hope that was helpful. I hope that you learned how to at least get started with particles. You know, there's like, if I click on new flight here, and I come back, so what I didn't tell you was how to actually connect it to a data ref. So say I like that, and it's fine. Right now it's always on, which is not good. So let's go into particle system browser one more time, connect that up to a data ref, and then we'll put it on a keyboard shortcut, and then you can turn it on and off with a keyboard stroke or a joystick button or whatever. So go into emitters. And we'll go down and right chem, right? So on the emitters, if you click on these starting at rate, right? Right now it's set to do its thing, show the rate of 1, or show the rate of 25 and 50 when the data refs are at 0 or 1 on this data ref dump water. We don't want to do that. We want to assign it to a custom data ref, right? So if you go into datareftool and you just type in the word custom, you'll see a bunch of custom slider ons. This is 24. There's 24 of these custom slider ons, right? And you basically just want to pick one of them. These are arbitrary data refs that you could assign any custom thing to. You got 24 of them. So a lot of aircraft already have used some, so they usually use the first, 1 through 7, 1 through 8 for stuff like doors and stuff. But we're gonna use 10. We're gonna use custom slider on bracket 10, right? So and then I'll show you how to assign that to a thing. So I cut and I paste, and I'm gonna do 10 here, right? I'm gonna double click this again, and I'm gonna copy it, Control C, right? And then what I'm gonna do is take every one of these little things here and just Control V on them, just to make sure they're all on that data ref. That's using that data ref, that's using it. That and this. Now, what I want to do is make sure that it's not showing when it's at 0, only showing when it's at 1. So the two things that I used there was rate, which I'm going to leave at, that's fine. I mean, actually at 0, I don't want it to do anything, so I'm going to change that to 0. So this is at 0, there's nothing coming out of the emitter when the data ref's at 0. When the data ref's at 1, it comes out at 25 and 50. The other thing I like to change is alpha. I want alpha to be 0 at 0, which means there's no chance that you'll see anything coming out of that emitter, because it's like crystal clear if it does, right? So you'd never see it. And then I'll do the same thing over here with left chem. I'll just click on this, make sure this is also set to custom slider on 10. Now you could have just copied this over again, like I did before, just copy right over to left and rename it again. But we'll just do this. Make sure it's 0, these are at 0. Make sure it's 0, the rate's at 0. Okay, now I'll save that and save. Now, if I go to, let's reload. Whenever I do that and I make a change that big to the data refs and stuff, I like to reload. Now to test it, to actually turn 10 on, it's actually 11 on the thing. So custom slider 10 on the data ref name is slider 11 in this part where you actually assign things, right? This is so dumb, but you want to look for the word slider. The reason is because slider 1 is actually the data ref bracket 0. Slider 2 is actually the data ref bracket 1, right? The name. So slider 11 is actually the data ref bracket 10. So what I'm looking for is slider 11, and I've already got that assigned to the keyboard stroke W, right? So if I come in here, I'm going to just get in the air real quick. Make sure I don't see anything. If I hit W, boom, there's my spray. If I take W off, spray goes off. W, W. That's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. I need to put my login and password in for X Aviation, as do all of the rest of you probably. I hope you had a good time. I hope you really enjoy this particles thing. And signing off for now.